So, welcome to this session. This is the Christie Davies panel dedicated to Christie Davies's work. We have a three-session panel. It goes on throughout the day. Also, the whole Christie Davies panel throughout the day will be live broadcast, and it will also be available later as recordings. So beware what you say. Well, I'm just happy to announce our first very brief introduction. Delia Chiaro will talk about the inevitable part of Christie, which was his vest, a sample of which you can see in the first row over there.
Yeah, so can you all hear me? This feels, yes, I can hear me hearing you. I'm a total imposter. I've never really thought much about ethnic jokes. Certainly haven't studied ethnic jokes, but am familiar with, like all of you here, all of us here, the work of Christie. But I'm here just for 8 minutes to talk about the person. I'm very, very honored to have been his friend over the past 20 years, and I'm especially honored to have been with him in those last weeks in Reading before he passed away. And I'm going to talk about the first thing, the most central thing about Christie was that vest, those vests of many pockets. And Janetta here in the front row, his wife, is wearing one of those vests.
I could not get rid of the ink stains.
But unlike Joseph's coat of many colours, Christie's vests were limited to 3 or 4 colours. Grey, green, chameleon military, and they were usually filthy Janetta. Very, very dirty. Pretty dirty. Which is interesting because, of course, much of his work was also on ethnicity and the dirty other. And the first time I met him, a long time ago, 20 years ago, he dropped his fork at breakfast. He picked it up, put it on the table, and retrieved another clean fork from one of the pockets in his vest. A vest of many pockets, a man of many pockets. He was a historian, he was a sociologist, he was a political scientist, he was a criminologist, an economist. I don't know how many things I've left out, but they were all backed by formal further education qualifications too. And as I said, I am honoured to have been his friend. And yesterday I asked Janetta whether Christie had any moles on his body. And apparently he hadn't, but like myself, he was covered in freckles. And those of you who heard the talk yesterday, moles, freckles, and other birthmarks are often a symbol of the trickster. And we all know what a trickster he was. Again, that first year that I met, that first summer when I met Christie, I remember him taunting poor Americans by insisting on speaking to them in Welsh, or I thought it was Welsh, insisting on using Welsh. But I found out at the celebration in his honour to Emmy earlier this year that his brother told me, but he didn't speak any Welsh. So it was the kind of double trickster. He would play tricks on all of us continually, offending people. The last offence was taken in my university. The last talk he gave in my university, he used to come to Forlì just about every year. He would love to go and visit Mussolini's tomb not because he was a fan of Mussolini's at all, but because he was absolutely fascinated by the fans that Mussolini still has in Italy. He was really fascinated by this. And he would buy postcards and send them to friends, signing faces of Mussolini. Now, obviously, you don't do that to people, but he would, and signing in another name. And I've since found out from Jan that these people didn't know they were from Christie. So the trickster continued. And he shocked my colleagues so much that there was a formal letter to the rector never to invite him again. Don't worry, Delia disobeyed that. That vest of many pockets, as I said, contained tickets, passports, and any kind of object you can think of. And I linked this with you, Lizzie. Last year in Montreal, he wasn't very hungry. We were in an Israeli restaurant. And he chose to go in there, but he chose not to eat anything. But he would surreptitiously pull things out of the pockets and pop them in his mouth. What was it that he was pulling out of those pockets? Dates. Dates. For some reason, and they were uncovered and they were covered in dust, and he'd put them in his pocket. And Lizzie and I would smile and wonder what he was up to. Jacob was blessed with many children, many sons, and he was blessed with the stars in the sky. The brightest star was Joseph. May I go as to say that our brightest star was Christie.
Thank you so much. It's lovely.
I'm going to cry.
No, you mustn't. If I'm not crying, you can't.
Thank you, Delia. Sorry, thank you, Delia. But let's move on with the next presentation. Gohabe is going to also give a more maybe personal reminiscence of meetings with Christie, and he has some unique recordings from early days that he would like to play us in the course of his presentation.
The slideshow here, and then from the beginning, right? Okay, how to move on? This one. Okay. I have titled today's presentation as Lessons Learned from Christie Davies, example from his home in Reading, on Marlborough Street, if I remember correctly. And before I get into certain topics that I prepared today, all these four major main topics for today's presentation. But before getting into these topics, let me talk about this photo. I received this photo through Delia. I think Delia circulated through our members. And when I saw this photo, I was at his house when he wore these T-shirts. And Christie told me the reason why
set me free, please?
He wore this T-shirt was
Otherwise
that
I can't talk. Oh, okay.
He wanted to welcome an American journalist who came to interview at his house. So that was his spirit, to put on stars and stripes. And I thought, well, I have this YouTube video at home, I thought. And this is the video he sent it to me, Sick Jokes, television program. But this is on VHS, about 18 years old already. And it's difficult for me to get the photos, I mean, the scene that you saw that he wore on that T-shirts. And, but I couldn't, really play this one, so I went to the video shop in the town I live to convert into the DVD, and it was successful. And this is it. But see, he was not wearing that T-shirt. And so actually, let me show you this one, okay? Oh, no, sorry, this one, okay, this one, okay? I have to play this.
it was a simple tragedy. It was a drunk riding at the time. There were thousands every year. But also it was a curious one because it was the death of a celebrity. All of a sudden, he'd gone over to some trivial show, some kind of competition.
Okay. So, well, this is, I put it together where Christie made comments. Also, Dr. Oring was also in this program too, if he remembers this TV program, broadcasted, I think, in the United States. And then I sent an email, Joel Warner, who also got in touch with me in Japan, whether, are you the ones who set it up on YouTube? He said, yes, we did interview him in his whole house, and he did tell us his favorite lawyer joke. The punchline was, okay, but what's the catch? It's one of the jokes from his book. And I exactly remember when he told this joke too. But the timing was wrong, Joel Warner told me they came to interview him in 2012. Wait a minute. I wasn't there in 2012. So anyway, that's the story. The reason why he put it on was to welcome an American journalist who came to interview him at his house. Okay, before I get into this, my first topic, let me share with all of you what I found at his study room. Okay, and this is a place. It's over there on top of the bookshelf. I found it. Okay. And when I saw this, I found it very interesting, the cartoon. And I didn't know what it was written at that time, 17 years ago. I was just a sort of a beginner in the study of humor. And then I brought it back to Japan and made photocopies. But left it there in my garage for 17 years, having done anything about it. But for this preparation, I asked Dr. Davies for her help to interpret this one. And somehow, as you see, it's an Aussie gentleman. But anyway, he's crude and what you call gentleman. Yes, yes. Okay, so let me start with what I have written for his first script. But for the first part, I will try to read it. But later on, because of the timing for 20 minutes, I will skip onto the videos, okay, and the audio cassettes. In the Humorous Times, summer 2017, two authors have shared in the obituaries for Christie Davies the common experiences of having received odd postcards from wherever Christie was visiting, giving a surprise, wonder, and a giggle to the receivers. I would like to share these two, one coming after this, what I found at his house. There are lots of postcards and objects he collected from around the world, including a small business card type mirror that he told me that he collected in Newfoundland. He told me this was a Newfie self-identification card. This is a joke about the stupid, quote unquote, Newfie, who doesn't need a business card, but who does need to look in the mirror to remind himself who he is. But I mean, I couldn't ask him to, may I borrow this and make a copy of it? It's impossible, Only a piece of paper that I found interesting. And so I brought it back. And this is one of it. As you see, I don't have time to just go over what is written. The next one is here. Another postcard I found that brought it back was Aussie Oka alphabet, each alphabet letter representing a special Australian word as G for gala and so on and so forth, as you can read it. I don't have time to go over through it. But in the end, for this preparation, I have found what these two postcards meant. For example, I would think these cards with Australians, male, and his language fit his Christie's descriptions of Australians and the jokes in his book, 1990, and in an article, 1997, where he describes how jokes about Australians tend to dwell on their crude approach, quote unquote, okay, and their scatological and vomitory indiscretion, especially after a bout of many Australian drinking, and incessant but skillful use of coarse language, unquote, including the word chanda. I think I heard the word chanda yesterday at one of the sessions about the vomiting. And this is, Christie says, the Australian gift for colloquialism and for a humor of masculine excess, end quote, that English lack, to quote his abstract from his symposium paper on the nature of English and British humor that we published in 2000 when we had a conference in IHS in Osaka. Okay, let's move on to well, this is what I said. So I wanted to, for our joint project that came out in 2004, wanted to include English regional jokes. And Christie already had in his book, 1998, and this joke, the Lancashire joke. Oh, excuse me, I don't know how to do that. What? I have to start from here.
You turn it off.
Yeah, turn it off. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we went to the Reading University Library. We found the original source, and this is the one. Okay, if you are English people who understand this regional joke, I don't have to explain what it means. But what I surprised after him giving me the explanation behind this joke are these. A firm grasp of cultural knowledge about Yorkshireman and woman is very essential to understand this joke. Number one, funny English, on and on, because I don't have time to read everything, okay? Please take a look at these. Second, canny, shrewd, clever, calculating. Number three, direct, blunt, forthright, who can say exactly what they mean. No subtlety, so on and so forth. Okay, even it follows number 4 and number 5 and number 6. It's double canniness between the woman and the butcher in the joke that makes the joke very interesting. I mean, as a foreigner, it's just impossible to decipher these hidden meanings, behind the joke. Maybe this is a typical joke that people can talk about it, pregnant with a lot of meanings. But I was very, very surprised that he explained to me very kindly, from 1 to 6 already. I mean, 6 altogether, embedded in the joke, you see. Okay. So Christie says, in a way, the jokes were a way of gaining insight into. And this is the kind of the framework that I have been listening so far since the beginning of this conference, on almost all the sessions I've been in, people trying to get in some kinds of insight into what is around us, or what was, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, as Dr. Elliot Olling talked about, the importance of contexts. The cultural, social, individual, and comparative context. Also, Christie talked about it too. It's something very essential for us to really understand what this is all about. Okay, and then let's move on to the next topic. Also, I have a audio cassette. Christie explained to me the one of the jokes in this Essex Girl jokes. Okay, and his review in Humor, 1992. He said the very best of Essex Girl joke is tasteless, but nutritious. I like the word nutritious. Okay, here is a copy of the book. I brought it back. Right? All right. Oops, just a moment, please. Okay, I have to. Okay, there's a little joke, question and answer. Okay, but the second one, I left the answer yet. Okay, so please figure it out. Now he's going to explain to me, singing a nursery rhyme. Okay.
Did you understand the Duke of York one?
No, not the Duke of York.
All right. Well, the Duke of York one. What is happening here? there's a nursery rhyme
Oh.
that all children in England know that goes, the grand old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men, he marched them up to the top of the hill and marched them down again. And when they were up, they were up, and when they were down, they were down, and when they were only halfway up, they were only halfway down. Now, children have taught that nursery rhyme, I think. And in fact, it's a very old, like a lot of British nursery rhymes, it was originally a political joke. Yeah, they used to make fun of the Duke of York because he was the commander of the army, and he never did anything. He just used to march himself down the hill, you see. And they made the song to make fun of him. And then they taught it to children. Everybody forgot it. And what they remember today is this nursery rhyme. Now, it's a shower. Right?
Oh,
It's a shower. Exactly. She had more. It's a shower on the word had.
Oh,
Yeah, you see. He had, in other words, he commanded.
commanded.
Yeah, 10,000 men. He had an army,
I see.
right? He had 10,000 men. In other words, he was in command of 10,000 men. For her, she had 10,000 men.
Okay, so what would be the answer? This little joke. Does anybody guess? Okay, he only had 10,000 men. And this joke too, this is from his book, but in the book, this is not the photo, I mean the pictures, you know. So he explained to me this joke too.
I mean, most of the jokes it won't come from because they're little jokes. And most of the long girl jokes are little jokes. And that's why I have doubts about the authenticity of those long girl stories. I think those stories were told about some other group and got adapted. Because when the sort of great blizzard of long Levitic girl jokes arrived, they were nearly all question and answer jokes. But there are some of them. For example,
This one.
there's a joke about there's a man who is taking an Essex girl out to dinner, and they're looking at the menus, and he says to her, "Do you like cock or vin?" And she says, "No, I think sex in a transit is tacky." Now, the thing is that she doesn't know what cock or vin is, which is simply, I mean, it's chicken in wine, if you like.
Okay, so this is what I got from him, you know, the meaning behind it. Actually, after the end of this session at his house, he wrote the map of East London and also the center of the city. You know, how the cartoon shows the social mobility and social class and mobility as well. You know, he also kindly suggested that I should read the Wilmot Young book and the Wilmot book at the same time, you know. Plus this, having drawn this map to understand behind it, you see. So he was, in a way, very kind to encourage me to study furthermore, okay? This is now moving on to the Scottish joke. How many more minutes? If you please tell me, okay? Yes, okay. This is also from his Mass of Nation book, okay? And he explained to me this Scottish joke. But when you see this joke in his book, probably you wouldn't interpret the 3 layers of the meaning in the joke. It's very difficult. It took me maybe more than 10 years to really understand. You know, I actually listened to the tape again. Now I understood it, okay? Let's hear this, his explanation of this joke, okay?
This joke, it says about it. It is 1874.
1874.
Yeah.
So we will include it. Could you explain the sort of the punchline of the...
Yeah. What is happening here, the joke is told first in Scottish English, and then I have translated it into Standard English.
From hop.
No, that's the word I invented. It doesn't exist. Folk English. Yeah, High English. There's no such word. It's making play with the phrase. Whereas, although I can read the one that's in Scots, if you were to ask me to tell it in that language, I'm not sure I'd get the pronunciation right. A Scotsman would probably say, "Oh, you got it all wrong," because I've only read it. I've not heard it said. I mean, if I were to go to Scotland and practice, then I could get it right. But just told, what I'll do, I'll read this and I'll comment on it. The first thing to note is it starts off with a piece of moralizing. This is very common in old jokes. The people feel that jokes should have a moral message. The jokes are not merely a piece of frivolous amusement. So it starts off, there sometimes appears to have been in our countrymen, that is, our fellow Scots, an undue preponderance of zeal for Sabbath observance as compared with the importance attached to other religious duties. Now, notice how ponderous the language is. This is the language of a minister of the church, in this case of the Episcopal Church, who is writing within the joke as if he were writing a piece of moral instruction. You know, this is not joke writing. And this again is an indication how traditional the joke is, that it should begin in that way. He then goes on to say, the following conversation between Mr. McNee of Glasgow, the celebrated artist, and an old Highland acquaintance whom he had met with unexpectedly, will illustrate the contrast between the severity of judgment passed upon treating the Sabbath with levity and the lighter censure attached to indulgence in whiskey. Now, again, that is written English, not spoken English. It's ponderous English. He's writing the same kind of way as if he were writing out a sermon. Because he's a minister. This is Dean Ramsey. Mr. McNee begins. Donald, what brought you here? Oh, well, it was a bad place where I was before. They were bad folk, but they're a God-fearing set of folk here. Well, Donald, said Mr. McNee, I'm glad to hear it. Oh, yes, sir, they are indeed. And I'll give you an example of it. Last Sabbath, just as the congregation was coming out of the church, a drover from Dumfries, that's a town in southern Scotland, and a drover means a cattle driver, means somebody who drives cattle from one place to another, came along the road, whistling and looking as happy as if it was the middle of the week. Now, what he's saying in essence is this, is that you should not be behaving like this on Sunday. And he talks about last Sabbath. He doesn't say last Sunday, which is the more usual way. He says, this man came up the road. He was a stranger. He's from Dumfries. And these people are in the Highlands. Dumfries is in the south. And he's whistling, and he's looking happy. As happy as if it was in the middle of the week. Now, this again is slightly strange from the point of view of the outsider who's a Christian. Because the Sabbath is supposed to be a happy day. Right? It's a religiously happy day. But there's no reason you shouldn't look happy, you see. I mean, the whistling, that makes it look frivolous. But he actually stresses this word, as happy as. Now, that is one for the jab line. You know, he's as happy as if it was the middle of the week, which of course implies that Sunday should be a miserable time. You see, so there's a jab line there. And then it goes on and it says, well, sir, our lads are a God-fearing set of lads, and they were just coming out of church, and they set upon him and nearly killed him. Now, these are a God-fearing lot, and they're coming out of church. And this man is all he's doing is he's walking up the road whistling. And these people set upon him and nearly kill him. You see. Now, for most people they would think, well, what's a curious kind of religion? I mean, for a start, it's wrong to set upon someone and nearly kill him. I mean, that's much more serious than whistling on Sunday. The man's walking up the street whistling and looking happy. These people have just come out of the church. No, he's not in the church.
Look, these young lads.
The young lads have been in church at the service, and they come out of the church at the end of the service, and they see this man in the street, simply whistling and looking happy. So they beat him up. Now, you see, the incongruity here, they just come out of church, that they ought to be sort of at peace with the world, they ought to be forgiving, they ought to be charitable, but what do? They go beat the man up. Because they're so obsessed with the keeping of a rule.
Okay, let's move on to the...
Okay. He's broken the rule about the Sabbath. The man who's whistling has forgotten that it's the Sabbath. He's behaving inappropriately on the Sabbath. And their religion is so narrow and so distorted that they go and beat him up. You see, that's what's funny about it.
Okay. So this is what I put it in the diagram. After having listened to the particular tape, I kept it, I don't know, I kept it more than, 16 or 17 years in the garage. And this March, I luckily found it. And just the notes, I mean, having reread the notes I had taken at his house, would not be enough to find out the layers of the jokes behind this Scottish joke. You know, I was very lucky that I found the tapes. Okay, but Christie told me at the end of the conversation of this Scottish joke, be careful. Two different audiences would interpret the joke as follows. In front of the secular audience, we can tell and use this joke by urging them to be against keeping the Sabbath. That is anachronistic stupidity. But in front of those days observant society, they may laugh. Well, we may not like that. And at the end of it, he said, from the example of this Scottish joke, jokes do not have fixed meanings. This is the nature we are dealing with. So, I see. You know, I didn't understand at the time, you see, but now it makes sense. And also from Scottish joke, because I wouldn't have time to play the cassettes, I have learned the essence of jokes is in indirectness, suddenness, as Dr. Elliot Olin talked about just in this session, you know, to understand the punchline. And this is a one, but I don't think I have time to play the Christie's explanation of this priest, minister, and the rabbi, and their experiences of having a miracle. It's a very interesting joke. But let me skip this one, okay, because of the time. Oh, really? Okay. Christie, read it? Okay. Well, I mean, the timing.
The last paragraph.
Last paragraph. So the rabbi said, well, they are talking about the experiences they have experienced, the priest and minister. And the rabbi said, I experienced a miracle as well. As I was walking down the streets on Sabbath on my way to a synagogue, suddenly I saw the side of the road a big packet of banknote. I looked at it. I knew there were at least 200,000 pounds of money. The problem is that I am an Orthodox Jew. I'm not allowed to carry money on the Sabbath. So I prayed and prayed and I prayed. Suddenly, 200 years around me, it was Wednesday. Okay, so this, and then after this, he told me the historical context of this joke, how it evolved at the present time. A priest and minister and rabbi joke originally told about three rabbis as one of the East European Jewish jokes only told by the Jews. And then to tell it in English, they put it in a conversation between the priest, minister, and the rabbi. And rabbi tells them that Jews are not allowed to carry money on Sabbath, but he tells it indirectly and emerges out of the conversation. That was the essence of this understanding this joke. Indirectness, suddenness. Okay? And then Christie also told me on campus at University of Reading this pun when we were walking down the streets on campus. And Mr. Wasserman applied for a job at another institution. He said there were 30 candidates. He was not shortlisted as his qualifications were not good enough. The appointing committee meeting agreed unanimously that he was not shortlisted. And Christie said, Wasserman failed the test. And then the laughter. Okay?
Don't you have to explain there is a thing called the Wasserman?
Yes, and I'm going to play the audio.
But it did it indirectly.
Indirectly, he said.
Very indirectly. And also, I was very careful to say that line without any emphasis, quietly, and with no facial expression. People would look at me and think at first, what on earth does that line mean? And then, of course, they realize I made fun of it and they laugh. But it's only funny if you do that indirectly. You see? Yes, the indirect thing has to be without emphasis. It has to be understated. That's the point about that. And the same thing, I mean, with regard to Wasserman, what had happened was that I was on a committee at another institution, not at my own university, and there were 30 candidates for a post, and we could only shortlist 6 of them. And there was a candidate called Wasserman, who was a very good candidate, but there was only room for 6 on the shortlist, and he didn't quite make it to the shortlist. And this was agreed around the table, and the chairman said, so it's agreed that we don't shortlist Wasserman. At which point I said, so Wasserman failed the test. Now, I said this with a completely straight face. I said it without any expression. I said it completely in a completely flat way. And people paused because they knew that there was something slightly strange about what I said. But for a moment they weren't quite sure what it was. And then they realized there was a shadow. And that in the background was a very indirect reference to the Wasserman test, which is a test for syphilis. And if somebody fails the Wasserman test, that means you've got syphilis. And so there's a main script which is about shortlisting people. Is the main script. Yeah. And
Shortlisting people.
Putting people on a short list, because that is what the entire conversation dialogue is about. That is the official purpose of the meeting. But at the last moment, the whole thing switches, and becomes by implication a reference to forbidden language, a reference to sexuality and to venereal disease.
And that's just the point.
Which is
the punchline. Okay. So after having reread and listened to the tapes, what I have learned from Christie through these cassette tapes and notes and his tutorials, the word I quoted from the Clifford Geertz, An Interpretation of Cultures in 1973, as I was a student at the time. Clifford Geertz said, "Man is an animal suspended in web of significance he himself has spun. I take culture to be those webs and the analysis of it to be an interpretive one, in search of meanings." So that's what I have been doing so far after having listened to his explanation, through tutorials. And then contextual understanding of the background of the jokes to untangle webs of implicit meaning embedded with the jokes. And 2, jokes do not have fixed meaning, as I said to you. Also, number 3, the essence of the joke is indirectness. And then I read the Victor Raskin's article in his obituary in European Journal, and he said Christie was also an essentialist. I asked him what it means, and then Victor kindly emailed me, who is always concerned with the nature and the essence of the jokes, what they are all about. Not simply telling this is funny and not so, such and such, but what is the joke? What is the nature of the jokes? That he always kindly explained to me. And then that is sort of my end of the tutorial lessons. And let me share with, this is also his handwriting. He explained to me this joke. A Roman Catholic bishop went around to visit one of his priests in the house. He shared with his young female housekeeper. The bishop brought the priest a very fine antique vase for his house. He talked with the priest for several hours about the state of the parish and then left. A week later, the priest phoned him and said, "I haven't been able to find the vase you kindly gave me. Please tell me where it is." The bishop said dryly, "You may look for it in your housekeeper's bed." But behind this joke, he said, very popular in southern Germany, in Austria, around 1960s, where there was an argument whether the priest should remain being celibate or not. So he always tells me historical contexts, behind all kinds of jokes whenever I learn from him. And then this one time I showed him that I collected in Australia. He said, "Wow, this is originally from US Pragues." Well, okay. There's no way for me to identify where it came from, He flatly said, no, this is not invented in Australia. This was invented in the US. Those kind of a contextual understanding, something I learned from him. And then this is also from his 1976 book, It's Funny Things, and Christie cites in his end of article references Davies C. Welsh fun. It says forthcoming. But I haven't seen this title of the book he published after that, And then he gave me this copy, Welsh Jokes. And author is Christie Davies. Maybe the first one, Welsh Wit. And Christie told me, this is the book in which my father collected all the jokes, not me. And then I realized Christie published it, probably with his name. Because they had the same name. Okay, this is the end of the book. And then I wrote an obituary for Christie in the Japanese Humor Society, and this is the one I wrote it. And I introduced several jokes, puns I talked about. And also I asked the artist to draw a photo of him instead of putting the one with the stars and stripes, So this is what I got from the artist. And several years before that, he emailed me about, Japanese whiskey won the world championship. And then this is Whiskey Bible. Okay, the first time in 12 years history of whiskey, Japanese whiskey has landed the title. To add to insult to injury, not a single Scotch managed to make the final 5 shortlist. And then Christie sent me this email. Congratulations to the Japanese on having produced a whiskey far superior to anything coming out of Scotland. It really does put an end to the Caledonian seeking independence. What you should do now is to patent some mock Scottish names and tartans to put on the bottles of the cheaper stuff, then write made in Japan in Gaelic in small letters in some inconspicuous place. How about McIntory coming from Suntory, Mac, Makeido, Makobe, Kobe from Kobe. Okay? For Irish whiskey, try Oshima or Osake. Oshima is one of the fellow scholars. And then he emailed me, will I be in Auckland? Yes, I was. I bought a ticket. I was ready for the airport on Sunday, but the airplane already left. So I canceled it. I shouldn't have it. Maybe that would have been the last time I saw Christie at the conference, because I saw him in Netherlands in 2014. And then this is what he emailed me, not to see in Auckland. And he really praised me in the session on humor and disaster that I had arranged and gave a presentation on that subject. And Japanese speaker and so on and so forth. And I wanted to say thank you, but certainly I have done. I sent an email, but I wanted to say it in person, but I couldn't do this. Okay, and then let's share the photos that I have. This lucky also I found it after 18 years, somewhere in the garage. I mean, when Delia asked us, well, do you have photos of Christie from the past conferences? I did take some, but I don't know where it was. Here is the one, okay, in Osaka. And with Victor, and this is a gentleman from Australia, and our president, and Mr. Muramatsu, and myself, and Kimi Oshima. And we went to the sea, and this is the photos, And this is a photo too. Yes, this is a photo. Yes. Yes. This is a photo. Yes. We went out to eat at night, you see. Yes. This is a photo we took together. It was Gislinda here. And another one too, Gislinda. Yes. So this is the end of it.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's have some questions too, because
questions.
I've just
I
have just decided that we will move the last talk of this session to the discussion slot in the last session. So we will have like 3 talks in every one then. So questions to go. Maybe he can play now some of his.
But after this, maybe you can talk to me about the photos. I can give you a copy.
I've got a question.
Yes?
Is your garage now looking like Christie's house?
It was before I cleaned it out. I was unable to find anything I put it there for a long time. But luckily I found it.
Yes.
The last moment. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Now it's working. Right. Okay, so let me make, while Dorota is setting up, let me make a short introduction. 18 years has been mentioned here, so actually this paper has been in brewing for 18 years. It actually stemmed from the conference that Dorota organized in the famous place in Poland called Kamień Śląski, which Christie wonderfully mispronounced, and where we met also with Christie and Salvatore in the year 2000. And after this conference, I took Christie and Salvatore for a visit into the mountains, into the highlands. In a little cottage, we spent a couple of days. It was raining there all the time, so there was no chance we could just sit by the fire and talk about jokes, what else, including the Highlander jokes. And there we had a wonderful conversation about them. I was quite keen on proving to Christie that Highlander jokes actually prove that Highlanders are highly intelligent. They are also cunning, much more cunning than people who would come from the town. And we had a discussion about it, as Christie had another opinion, which was actually that maybe they are cunning, but in the end they are not so bright, and they are pulling the urban folks' leg, but just to prove that they don't know about urban life. So in other words, he had a greater background to prove than me in terms of context, which Go wonderfully showed here before. So we'll be talking about some of that, and also I'll have to tell you about another little anecdote which happened in the mountains. Because Christie came quite often to Poland, and we went on various tours. And once we went to the High Tatras. In order to, that was just a short walk. Jan knows about it. This is called Morskie Oko, one of the highest, the most famous spots in the Tatras, High Tatras, like alpine place. But in order to get there, we need to walk for about 9 kilometers up the hill. And then the same the other way. And there were some Highlanders who have their right. Yeah. So this is all the way down here. Yes, the mountains. And the Highlanders have their horse carts, which take up to 20 tourists up and then down. And then it was late. We were walking down. We spent most of the day in the mountains. And then the Highlander didn't really feel like taking us along all the way down. Yes, he looked pretty much like this. And Highlanders are well known to be very keen about the money. Okay, he said, because there were like 18 other people sitting there. He said, okay, I'll take you, but we need to pay, which is something like 50 zlotys a person. Which was double the price usually, right? But Christie knew all about Highlanders, so he, instead of talking to him a bit any longer, he just started walking down. It's just like, we are walking down, we don't care about your prices. And then the Highlander shouted after us, okay, 20 is enough, right? So he knew a lot about Highlanders, and this was the practical knowledge that he had. Okay, so with this, I'll give the floor to Dorota, who will explain the points we are making.
Yes.
I'll say afterwards a few words.
Yeah. Okay. So Tatra Mountains. I showed you here on the map what we are talking about actually. We've got several different minorities in Poland, but this one is the culturally or from the folkloristic point of view very strong one, because people there for many years preserved their style of being, their traditional food, also very traditional dresses. So it's not that they are hidden somewhere in some kind of museums. You just go there to Zakopane or some areas nearby, and then you could very easily see people dressed like this. Yes, so
male or female dresses children or whatever, not during the wedding ceremonies, but also, you know, like regularly. And the architecture is also very typical, somehow maybe like Estonian wooden houses here, but with a different kind of, you know, flavor in this. And basically the main character of those jokes is called Baca. So and he looks like well, like this one, yes. Even if the picture was taken like in the beginning of the 20th century, but still they look more or less the same. And he is head shepherd. And the main character of those jokes, which are, you know, some of them, yes. He is very down to earth, so that's for sure. So, and he has got the special kind of wisdom. So it's why we could think, is he wise or is he fool or wiseful type of character? So we thought that it resembles a little bit the good soldier's Schweik, which was so adored by Davies. He has written many papers about Schweik. So we thought that it's another kind of point that could be mentioned here. And the lifestyle of this Baca, so this Highlander, is very often in real life, but also in jokes, of course, contrasted with the life of people from town. So that they come as tourists or to spend some time in the mountains, as the mountains were very kind of inspirational for Polish culture, for Polish intellectuals. So there was the wave of interest in this area. People starting going there for because it was said that it's really like looking for the roots of Polishness. There, and for some healthy reasons as well. So the air was supposed to be very, very clean, and green areas and so on. But also we've got a lot of poets writing about the beauty of the mountains and dramas and some other stuff. So like the culture was very inspirational for intellectuals. But on the other hand, of course, from the point of view of shepherds, yes, when they've noticed tourists not prepared to go to the high mountains because we've got some bears living in there, or sometimes when the weather changes, it gets really dangerous, yes, to be there. So you should be aware. So how much time you will need to go to the top and be able to come back. So that's one of those. Sorry, I'm not going the right way. We've got. We've collected material from the books because it's a series that it's there. So it was there for many years. So it's a kind of static. Not many new things happen with this cycle. So it was revived, for example, by when we entered the European Union. It occurred that now several new jokes making fun of EU officers or like bureaucrats going to the mountains appeared, but basically it's a kind of part of our folklore. That's very easily found on different joke sites. There is usually one connected with this Baca. And we've got one of famous our philosophers who was also a Reverend Tischner. So he was a Highlander himself, and he wrote a history of philosophy, the Highlander way. among others. So highly philosophical text, but also he was somehow underlining that he is a Highlander, and he claimed that if you cannot translate something into the Highlander speech, it's not true. So, because Highlander speech is very, very special. It's a kind of dialect, of course, but needs simplification. Yes. So, for many words, there are no words in this Highlander. But so, and he also had some. So maybe I will skip it, but there he also showed like that relation between Bata and all ancient Greek philosophers, and even try to show the difference. So claiming that Greeks were really not Greeks, only the Highlanders who played dumb. So who pretended to be Greek. Because in the beginning there were not any Greeks, only Highlanders were everywhere. So he had got this, of course, kind of funny theory about Greek nature of our Highlanders, and then changing the names or using the names of real mountain dwellers. He proved that, for example, one of them was, so Plato was really Władek Trybuna Tutka from Biały Dunajec, and it seemed to him that everything, including himself, was a shadow of itself. Yeah, so like explaining philosophy using those local names. And
Go back to the previous slide. This is the previous. Oh yeah, that's right. So this one, and also the next one, the Polish is in dialect. So that's not standard Polish.
Yeah. So which?
You all noticed.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, but I mentioned this dialect. So yeah, the fact that he wanted to translate like serious philosophy, serious theological matters into this Highlander dialect that or speech that sounded quite incongruous with this anyways. So. The people of the mountains usually because in 18th and 19th century there were times where there was extreme poverty in this area, so that's what they could do. They could just deal with their flocks of sheep, and that was how they so like very basic rural type of dwellers, and some of them actually migrated to states. Yeah, so we could discuss how they influenced the Polak jokes, for example, because they really came from those rural areas, but it's not. Yes, so but they've got still saved the language, music, dances, and the strong feeling and strong experience of freedom because of those spaces. They're very said to be very proud. People proud of themselves, and very often, sometimes, or like aggressive. Yeah, so aggressive they could be, especially after they drank some alcohol or whatever. Yes, during those huge meetings, they starting quarreling just to prove who is stronger and do it for fun. So. Yes. Why I'm going not opposite direction? Sorry. So in many jokes we've got the Bata who just who is does little because, yes, he just sits and looks at the sheep around, so maybe there is not much to do. So one of the examples, it's like tourist walks along a trail and suddenly hears, "Oh, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." He runs towards the sound and sees a Baca sitting on a tree stump with an ox driven into the ground next. And, "Oh, Jesus, Jesus, sweet Jesus, tourist. Baca, what happened to you?" Baca, "To me? Nothing." "Oh, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Maybe to someone from your family." "Mine? Oh, no, no, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, so why are you moaning so much?" "Oh, Jesus, I don't feel like working so much." So
well, I have to add here that they are very religious, right?
Yes.
Highlanders are strongly religious, so that's something to be
yeah,
remembered here.
very connected.
Traditional. In the traditional way.
Yeah, traditional churches, very nicely, usually they dress for the church, like in those traditional clothes, and so on. And there are some others, so like the jokes are traditional as well, but then we've got a lot of, versions and reusing of the words, and one should make do somehow set a Baca trying his shoe with an earworm. Once again, so they are this type of people who can manage. And we've got because a lot of traditional products. Maybe those of you who have been in Poland, you've tried oscypek. It's quite nice actually. Even if it smells of smoke and burnt wood, it's a kind of traditional smells. Yes, so. During the carnival, a Baca was invited to a fancy dress party. His acquaintances asked him what costume he will wear. "A goat cheese costume." "What do you mean, a goat cheese costume, Baca?" "I will just sit quietly in a corner and I will stink." So, and of course, they were supposed, because they were wearing those fur coats that usually not so many dry cleaning places around, I guess. So, and they inherited the clothes from their parents or grandparents and so on. So we can imagine that really, and being around.
I think I can add here that contributed to. Later, at least in Christie's interpretation to the script of Polak as a dirty Polak. So that was based on the American experience of Americans who bought these people who just sit there in a corner and stink, which actually suggested that they haven't actually washed for a while, right? So it's just like the traditional washing only on Saturday night before the Sunday morning mass. Yeah? So therefore. Hence this, but that's obviously a stereotype. Nothing is true about that at all.
Yeah, and this physical force once again. So sometimes they were just instead of only sitting, they were quarreling just to make their time. So, Baca, you have beaten up your neighbor. Do you have anything in your defense? Nothing. The police took my lever from me. So, or I've heard you've been beaten up in the forest yesterday. Some forest, just a few trees. So nothing. So like kind of normal situation. Yes, that they just meet and go and fight, and so what? Yes, and the other relation present in many jokes is the Baca's attitude towards women or towards his wife. So, like in this example, when we've seen that. There was the woman who was kind of aggressive, and then if she was asked, because once again priest is here, yes, because she went and confessed her sins. "Do you regret your sin?" asked the priest. "Very much. Yeah, the pot was so pretty and expensive." Yeah, so it seems that the women are kind of strong characters in those jokes.
Well, I'll have to add, I mean, two things about this other joke. One thing is that there's this religion very strongly, right? Roman Catholic religion. On the other hand, you've got this weakness for money, right? Two things together. They don't really go together, right? I mean, but for the Highlanders, maybe they do, right? But that's the question of the context.
Yeah. And actually, we've got this theme of sheep that actually, like Christie has written in his book about Welsh, about Scots or New Zealanders that have got a very so-called emotional attitude toward their sheep, towards their sheep. Yes. So it's not very common script in Polish jokes. Even if the situation could be similar, yes, but they are not particularly.
We are Catholic, of course, right?
Yeah, so maybe, yes, the language we've mentioned, yes. So and here once again, telling. It's more like a wordplay, yes, because you are such a sage. Do you almost please tell me how many truths are there? And the Highlander replies, I know 3, and first one is the holy true, the second is nothing by the true, and the third one is bullshit. But maybe in the Polish version it sounds.
The Polish version is slightly better here. Right?
Yeah, maybe
because
you could read the line.
There's a cliche.
Wojtek, sorry.
Wojtek, wyście taki mądry, ale wszystko prawie wicie. To powiedzcie, wielo jest prawd. Każde na to. Ja znam ino 3. Pierwszo jest święto prawda, drugo też prawda i trzecie gówno prawda. Right? So there is
prawda,
this is a cliche.
Truth.
This is like a saying. You know, this in a conversation with someone, when somebody is talking nonsense, you say gówno prawda, which means I don't agree with you, right? So therefore, that's philosophy of truth seen by Highlanders.
Yeah, and the other thing is that very often the Highlanders are very high context kind of people, so they are saying one thing but having in mind many other things. So it's also a kind of script used in jokes. So, for example, if Baca is approached by a tourist, let's say you are Baca, yes. Baca, shall we reach Morskie Oko Lake when we walk this way?
Sure, just walk straight ahead.
When tourists have left, the Baca says to himself,
the earth is round, ain't it?
Yeah, or Baca, what do you do when you meet a hungry bear in the mountains?
You ain't do nothing. It will do all for you.
Yeah,
well, this is kind of difficult because we're using a different dialect in translation. Yeah, so maybe it doesn't really work so well with this kind of slang American English. Yeah.
Yes, but still it shows a little bit the type of reasoning behind it. So like tourists asking some questions and Baca answering, right? Yes, but then it means that the tourist is left on his own. Yes. So once again, Baca, will you show us Giewont, Mount Giewont? Tourists ask Baca.
Oh, yeah. Did you see that first hillock?
Yes.
That isn't Giewont. And did you see that second hillock?
Yes.
That isn't Giewont either. And did you see that third hillock?
No.
Well, that's Giewont.
Okay. Yeah, so summing up, we try to think whenever it's the preference of mind over matter in those jokes, or if we could tell that they are who is wise, who is stupid? Is tourist stupid? Is tourist wise, or Baca, or how it works? And also, who is in the center? Who is in the periphery? Yes, who is cunning and so on. So like this mind over matter model, we think it could work in here as well. As it seems that the mind still prevails over matter here, and yes, so it could be interwoven into this concept, the Davies' concept of urban versus rural, for example, opposition. Yes, so yeah.
I maybe add something here because that's. Actually, I started this session with an introduction about our dispute with Christie, right? And this is important to realize that Christie had this sort of international background of the rural jokes, or jokes talked about the rural people. And obviously, he knew all kinds of other jokes told in other cultures. But he didn't have this background of Highlanders as seen as wise, or as seen as knowing a lot about life, or as seen as cunning, but in this sort of creative sense. But generally Highlanders are held in high esteem by many people from the city, right? This is not really the kind of group that you look down on as primitive brutes, yeah, far from it. Yeah. So there is both their culture and their way of thinking. They're synthesizing as if ability to synthesize is appreciated. Yeah, those sort of jump straight into the matter and explain to you in just 2 words what you wanted to explain in a paragraph. Yeah, so that's another part of this vision. Plus the religious nature and this philosophical aspects of the way of thinking.
Yeah, thank you very much for. Actually, we've published already the paper, so short advertisement. Yes.
Yeah, this has been published in the special issue we published for Christie in December last year.
So once again,
so it's available online.
So questions first.
This one.
I mean the kind of picture.
Is there a term for that method of, using circumstances, problem solving in a haphazard way? Is there a term in Polish for that in dialect? Because we have, in India, we have a term called jugal, and we're very proud of it because we do everything in a haphazard way and we somehow come out on top. So I'm trying to see if you have jugal in Polish.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think we have a special term. Yeah. Maybe it's in Highlander. Yeah, maybe there's one in Highlander, although I cannot recall. Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
It's, apart from cunningness, well, there's the term spryt, but this means cunningness. Yeah.
So like,
I was thinking kombinować.
yeah.
Maybe there isn't.
Well, kombinować means
like verb. So
in English that means to sort of figure out a way to solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's another one which is called załatwić, which is kind of also difficult to translate. Załatwić, that means also manage to organize something so that something works. Yeah. So, like załatwić sprawę, you go to an office and then you sort of make things work, even though it's not easy, right?
This is the word we use for the way we send this Mars mission at a figure. About 1 million the Americans paid to send their Mars mission, their mission to Mars. So we muddled along and somehow we got right.
Yeah.
Jury rig or jerry rig. It's improvising out of whatever is at hand.
Okay.
I just want to find out your explanation on the Edward T. Hall's book on high context and low context. Could you get back to the slides, and make sure what you meant by citing his work on that line?
Sorry, I guess it's...
There was a bit of a summary here, so
this is it, yes.
Right, yeah.
The first line.
Right. So it's the idea of Highlanders as high context people. Right. I mean, I mentioned the synthesis idea, right? So you, I think maybe you agree.
High context meaning.
High context meaning that you need to know just few words. You need to say few words
and understand everything, like
from
looking
the context.
Right? At the context.
So, for example, a gesture, right? A gesture like this will be high context. You don't have to explain.
Okay, I got it. And usually in Japan, that we are classified as high context culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Europeans, English language societies as a low context. You have to tell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
One to one.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, the higher into the mountains, the higher the context.
Make sure with the usage of the Edward T. Hall. Thank you.
Do you see any similarity between Bata and Ivan the Fool, the Russian folklore hero? Or for you, Bata is a unique quality type of character? Trickster, wise fool?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, do you have an example of? Do you know anything about?
Examples that Brzozowska shows, like Bata doesn't want to work. There's something Ivan the Fool always does. Doesn't want to work, but he gets out of a kingdom and a princess.
Right. Well, we actually in the paper that we published, we cited Montenegro jokes, by the lazy Montenegro, and yes, which emphasize the script of laziness. Yeah. But we also cited some Welsh jokes, where, especially in the context of these sort of sexual jokes, about the primitive Highlander, right? So there were some overlaps, but I think we claimed in the paper that
that is a kind something typical for like the area because of so many contextual information that are actually in those jokes, that they are not so easily to being exchanged for some others. But of course, if there are some about stupidity only, for example, then probably it would be easy. But it's typical.
An interesting aspect is that even the fool is actually a lowland character, so it's not a Highlander.
Okay, that's interesting.
So what about Lowlander character?
A farmer.
Oh, a farmer, right,
yeah. But because here it's like we can imagine it easier that like Highlanders sitting and the flock of animals doing whatever. So but with a rural character, probably he needs to take care of the soil to grow something, basically. Yes.
Well, I think I can add that this. I think again, stemming from the discussion with Christie, this sophisticated element of this Bata character is something which is unique. I don't think that would be anywhere in combination with the certain crudity and certain cunningness, and also this religious. Yeah, the combination of the features, I think it is quite special.
Yeah, because it's not like a laziness, like a typical laziness, but whenever there is no point of doing something because it wouldn't change the situation, so he's just not doing, the things that because you could run around and so what, and then nothing would be done.
Nina. So. Sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry. Maybe you want to come up here because I can't hear you.
I've been studying Belarusian rural groups and comparing them with the American rural groups, specifically with hillbillies.
Right.
So Appalachian
explain.
It's a stereotype in America, and why was it a stereotype in the Polish society?
Well, we've tried to explain it. I'm not sure. Maybe we didn't. We failed in explaining it, but.
Yeah, and I guess that someone who probably is wise at his own, area. So like he knows how to behave to survive because it could be dangerous. Maybe not wise in a city where a city is not so easy to. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you could also talk about the Scots in this connection, right? There's some jokes about Highlanders and their love for money, right? So that's another stereotype which comes into play here, right? So the combination is quite special. Well, I think like Christie, we need to go and look at the context, right? So, the Catholic tradition, the poverty of the 19th century, and particularly this very strange period when people from Krakow, and also Warsaw and other places would come to the highlands and just be amazed by the culture, by singing, by architecture, and some of the artists from town. Like there was one in particular, called Stanisław Witkiewicz, who would actually go to Zakopane and sort of worked on the style of architecture by the Highlander architecture in order to develop their own unique style, sort of taken from the perspective of town. Yeah? So it was like a renewed style. So there's lots of this respect for for their ingenuity, for their cleverness, for their also dexterity in terms of working with the manual work. Yeah, it's like carpentry in particular. Yeah? The people are amazed at how skillful they were. So I think this explained it to a certain extent. Plus the way of thinking, plus wonderful dialect. Yes, that they have, and it's highly appreciated against in places like Krakow. Yes, there were even works of literature in which both Krakowians and the Highlanders took part. Yeah, there's a play Krakowiacy i Górale, which brings the two together. So it's
and the high also kind of moral standard. So like that they are Highlanders pictures are very honest. So they will. Not in the way maybe that they are honest, even if someone doesn't understand what they are talking about. But on the other hand, that they will not play politically correct type of game, for example.
Right, but then you have to remember about this confession joke, right? Mm-hmm. They are, it's like they destroying the expensive pot, yeah. So. They are stereotypically seen as honest, but then if there's a problem, they'll find a way around it. Yeah. So there's this cunningness aspect. If there's a problem with honesty, well, let's try to sort this out somehow so that it works, and we don't come out as dishonest.
Fix a high price and stick to it.
What?
Fix a high price and then stick to it.
Yeah. Right.
You get a high price first.